Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Is it showing? Yeah, it's working. Great. So today I'll be talking about reversing the design process. Something that I found about recently. Thought I'd share. Maybe will be useful for you guys. First of all, a bit of an introduction. My name is Piotr Gajos. I'm Polish. Moved here recently, about 2 months ago. I'm an SVP of design at Sourcebits. And I've been with the company for about 6 years. Shortly before that, I won an Apple Design Award for a dashboard widget called iClip Lite. That's me. What am I going to be talking about? I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of the UI design process. And what I mean by that is that the process seems to be following the change that we see in the platforms that we work on. And I'm talking specifically about mobile platforms, introduction of iOS 7 and the most recent big apps released for it seems to be a good indicator of what is happening with the tools that we're using and how we're designing for the platforms. And the question is, what can you take out of it? If you're a designer, if you're a founder, if you're an investor, I hope that this talk is going to help you to be able to recognize the right people to work with. The right designers, hopefully the right thinkers, people with the right skill sets. The second thing is, what I hope to show is to give you a bit of a reassurance that failing quickly is a very good thing where you have a startup. And essentially, this is the only way you can march towards creating a product that will meet your quality standards, which hopefully are super high. And this can only happen by iterations. Iteration is the name of the game. And finally, I will be showing a few tools, apps, things that you should be arming yourself with, gaining knowledge and training yourself to be able to deliver in this changing process. Okay, and first, disclaimer. UX design as a notion, as a profession, I personally believe it does not exist. I have a big problem with this notion since it appeared on the scene and then started exploding. If you call yourself a UX designer, then there's something wrong here. And let's take it apart a little bit. UX is obviously user experience, and let's ask, what is UX? UX is a highly individual and subjective act of you reacting to what is happening on the screen in front of you. You interacting with the software, with the machine, a human-machine interaction and your reactions to it. And UX, your UX as an individual reaction is based in your experiences, your knowledge, your character, who you are basically. Therefore, user experience is different for every single person in this room. Therefore, saying that you can design user experiences is a little bit of an exaggeration. So saying we design user experiences, I believe, is profoundly wrong. What we should be saying is we design for user experiences. We create tools, methods, software, UI in general that help evoke certain emotions, and putting aside even the functional aspect, that is a given these days, right? Your app needs to work, but you want to evoke certain emotions, make the user happy, create a sense of hopefully bliss and enjoyment. So we design for user experience. And continuing in that vein, creating a user experience, evoking a certain user experience is connected to many factors in your design. And as the time goes, as we see the shift towards multi-touch and how it is becoming more and more familiar to users, it has become apparent that it is very difficult to design things that will be effective on your mobile screen because of the tools that we've been using, the tools that were static, the tools that were we're giving you the ability to design static screens without transitions, without showing what is going to happen with this UI. And tools like, I don't know, Balsamic, Illustrator, Photoshop even, they don't give you the ability to figure out what kind of UX you want to do. You can come up with a color palette that you hope is going to make things cheerful, but at the end of the day, if it's not smooth, if the movement of things on the screen is not done in a certain way, it's going to fall apart anyway. So you need to come up with tools and ways to be able to figure out how things feel as early in the process as possible. So this is a typical design process. It varies. People use different words for different things, but this is more or less what happens when you're designing. You obviously start with a concept, some documentation, you break it down, you do some research, lo-fi wireframes, or it could be your sketches, can be your paper prototypes, or balsamic wireframes, whatever works for you. Then you go into more high fidelity wireframes where you document the functionalities, which is mostly beneficial to developers. And then you, if time permits, you cram in a bunch of prototypes that you do in tools like Axure, or you do interactive PDFs. Maybe you use Keynote, which is wonderful, but that's not that frequent. And then you do visual direction, which is more related to the brand side of things. This is where you choose your typography, your color palette, and then you implement everything. So you document, you sit with developers, and you work on actually making the application a real thing. The problem is, out of all these steps, the most important step happens before you know how your app will be shaped, will have its end shape, and it is so short usually, and the tools used are so low fidelity that you don't get a feel of the app at all. And I'm talking about prototyping. So what happened was, and this is my personal experience in 2 or 3 most recent projects that I've been working on, and there was pure improvisation. I decided, how about I flip it up, I compress certain things, and I focus on something else and see what happens. So what I did was this, basically. The concept stayed. We spent a lot of time figuring out what we want to do, but then I spent literally a day doing lo-fi wireframing and visual direction so that I just have some bits and pieces to play with, and rest of the time I've been spending with prototyping and iterating on high fidelity prototypes, things that give you an exact idea of how the app will feel, how you can interact with things, what the animations feel like, as opposed to static linear screens. And this is just, a warning, maybe a warning and advice. Many designers love this stuff that I'm showing right here. Paper prototypes, sketches. This is actually, I think this was done with a pencil and watercolors. So there was a considerable amount of work put into it, but I can tell you, this is a waste of time. This is a beautiful piece of art. Don't get me wrong, it's really nice. But this kind of thing, if you want to reach the market quickly, if you want to create something that you can feel and play with, this should be resolved in your head in 15 minutes. And this looks like it took, I don't know, a week. Because the thing is, this, has marks of process fetishism, you could say. You put a lot of effort into doing these small baby steps towards the beginning of your project because, I don't know, maybe you're not confident, you don't have enough experience, you are not bold enough to jump into the things. But the problem is your stakeholders, people you work with, they're not interested in how the car is designed and engineered. They want to drive it, they want to enjoy it, right? So you need to get to this step as quickly as possible. And so, continuing in that vein, let me give you a few examples of tools and processes and methods, what you can do to get there quickly. and get very tangible and awesome results. So on the scene, you know, the usual suspects in terms of software, we have from the left to right, we have Apple's Keynote, Adobe After Effects, and again, Apple's Quartz Composer. And recently, a new kid joined the block on top of Quartz Composer, Origami from Facebook. And these are the tools that I chose to talk about. I know them, I've worked with them. There are many others, then obviously you might be more comfortable with. The thing is, the end result needs to be as close to the actual application or anything else that you want to release as possible. We want to get really, really high fidelity prototypes. So let's talk about Quartz Composer and Origami real quick. A beautiful thing about this, a coincidence, when I was working on the current project that I'm doing now, I started about 4 weeks ago. And like I said before, I jumped into After Effects almost immediately. And whilst working on prototypes in After Effects, Facebook Paper came out. And you know, as a designer, I was humbled. It's a beautiful app in terms of interaction design. It's clear that they spent majority of that 3 years. They spent working on its own design. And as it turned out, they changed their design process in a very significant way, which turned out to be very similar to my process. So there was a very nice validation from a giant, from Facebook, people that I get inspired with, and I was humbled with this design. So it was wonderful that they sort of gave me a validation to my process. Basically what they say, as it says here, the head of design on this project said that before they worked with Photoshop, with Illustrator, they delivered static mock-ups to their management team, and this is how it shaped their discussions. And their products reflected that. You remember, I mean, most of you probably still uses the regular Facebook app, and so you know how little of interaction fun is there. You have chat heads, and that is pretty much it. Everything else is run-of-the-mill regular UI. And change in the process allowed them to put a lot more pressure on interactions, on the feeling of fun and bliss with the app. And a word of warning to a designer, Quartz Composer, even with Origami, will be challenging. It's not a design app. It's a visual programming application. You have in your infinite canvas, you drop in patches, building blocks, you connect them, you modify properties. You don't design it in a classical way where you put together a layout and then you create a sequence of events, like for example in Keynote or After Effects. Here you can actually build a working prototype that you can click, and it is going to have animations just like your iOS animations with all the bounciness, springs, and slowdown effects. Everything is there. It's just the learning curve is quite high, but I totally recommend it, because once you are past that initial friction, the things you can do are mind-boggling, and they proved it with Facebook Paper. So that's Quartz Composer, definitely worth learning, especially with Origami, which provides a lot of additional tools for designers. The second thing is Keynote, and I think it's been quite popular for a while now. What is interesting, the URL that you have on your screens, it's a link to an article on Keynotopia blog where the author recreated Facebook Paper UI in Keynote in 15 minutes. That tells you a lot about how powerful Keynote is and how great it is for UI design, despite its apparent limitations, especially with the recent release of the latest version of iWork, where a lot of functionalities were removed. It's still fantastic. It has all the transitions, all the animations built in with the correct timings, correct speed and build-up curves. It's just fantastic. So it's really worth looking into, and this allows you to build things definitely quicker than other tools, and of a little lower fidelity. If you are someone who lives on a grid, so to speak, then it will be challenging to get used to Keynote, where everything is much more fluid, and it's difficult to get a perfectly clean layout. One more thing that is important to add, coming back to Quartz Composer also, is that Quartz Composer will not let you run your prototypes on your mobile device. That sucks, I know, but something is in the works apparently. Maybe Apple, maybe a third-party developer will soon release something that will let you do that. For now, you can click things on your desktop. And the third tool, which is my personal tool of choice, is Adobe After Effects, because my personal approach to design is not only it is a problem-solving exercise, but I also believe that design is storytelling, which is also incredibly important in terms of building for user experience, because if you build a certain story where there's certain emotions that are evoked, you build tension, you build suspense, all that contributes to how user reacts to your app. And I'm going to show you a couple very simple things that I did for our previous, my previous project, Twine app. This is an animation of chat bubbles animating. This was done in After Effects, and I focused here on animating the bubbles coming in and out, what are the speeds, how they bounce, how they elongate when text appears. And the wonderful thing is, we didn't need any documentation apart from that. I showed this animation to a developer, and he recreated it in the app one-to-one. It's a perfect mirror, and this is all you need. You don't need pages of wikis or, I don't know, documents in Basecamp or whatever. This is all you need. And actually, on top of that, it is possible in After Effects to export your animation properties as XML. So developers have an even better insight in what you're doing. And here's another animation, the animation of the home screen. And here I try to create this Hollywood-type movie effect where things are coming in, they're showing up in sequence and animating. Ultimately, we didn't do that because of performance restraints, but this is how you can work with After Effects to create a story, to create a bit of a cinematic experience in your app. So we have all these tools. And what I think you can take away from trying them out, there are different things for different people. Let's say regular people, stakeholders on the project. You could say clients, customers, your CEO, someone who's not technical. These people, if you create prototypes of such high fidelity, and if they're interactive too, they will get an exact idea of what the software is shaping up to be at the end. So very early in the process, you can get the exact feel of the app, and you can explain it to people who don't get it otherwise. I can tell you that if you show a non-technical person a bunch of wireframes like that paper prototype that I showed you before, they're going to ask, why is it all on paper? Why the fonts? Why the colors? They're not going to focus on what is important. They're going to focus on what they see. This is how human brain works, right? So high-fidelity prototypes allow you to get there really quickly and have a very fruitful conversation. The second group of people is obviously investors, right? These prototypes make for wonderful business pitches. You can show the investor that you know what you're talking about. You don't have to explain things at length. If you have a 1 minute or 2 minutes video or a prototype done in Quartz Composer or Keynote even, you can show them, hey, dude, this is what we're building. And they will be able to understand it instantly, and they will be either identify themselves or tell you that, sorry, I'm not going to back it up right away. So again, speed, fail quickly or succeed quickly. And the third group of people, which to me as a designer, hands-on person, is very important, is developers. There's often a lot of friction between designers and developers on teams. Designers often have a lot of attitude. Hey, this guy doesn't understand what I'm talking about. This is not implemented perfectly, and things like that. And this is more often than not due to the fact that majority of the knowledge that you want to give to your developer is stuck in your head. If you give developer even a beautifully documented set of PSDs, it is still static. They're not going to know how things are supposed to animate, how they're supposed to move. So if they see high fidelity prototypes, they will be able to, again, identify themselves very quickly and just get to work without the need to bug you with questions or implement it in the wrong way because they don't have enough information. This is almost information overload. So that is wonderful. So that is about it. Yes, I think that the main theme is high fidelity prototypes. Better if they're interactive is something great to be trained in, and it will help you get to creating whatever you want to create much faster, and you'll have a lot better understanding. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Peter. We have time for one, maybe two questions. Sorry, running a little bit behind. Peter's going to stick around.
Yes.
And Sourcebits has a booth in the demo pit area. So if you have specific questions that you need an in-depth answer in, he's going to be your guy. Go for it.
How are you using After Effects to prototype the app?
That is a question for a 2-hour conversation. Let's talk on the sidelines, okay? I'm going to tell you everything.
I know you said you basically use this for mobile, but do you have any recommendations for mocking up a high fidelity for a parallax experience on a website? So like the two-dimensional experience, can you recommend anything that we could use for that?
For that, I mean, obviously you could use Keynote, you could use After Effects. In After Effects, you can do everything. You can bend every single pixel in whichever direction you want, but I think it would be an overkill. Actually, for web, the simplest things is to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I think Facebook, before they released Paper, they released a framework, I think it's called Framer.js, that they used for prototyping web stuff.
Last question.
So an entrepreneur on the business side or a domain expertise side, would you recommend that they, instead of learning to code, which is so popular these days, instead learn to use After Effects and these other tools that you're talking about instead?
Instead of what? I'm sorry?
Would you recommend that an entrepreneur who's not very technical, who's on the domain expertise side or the business side, learn these tools instead of learning to code?
If you are not very technical, I'd recommend you jump into Keynote. Because it will be the least frustrating experience at the very beginning. And then you can work your way up there. And you need to determine, do you have a design brain or do you have an engineering brain? If you have a design brain, then you will embrace After Effects almost naturally. If you have any exposure to Photoshop whatsoever, you will see that After Effects is essentially Photoshop with a timeline. So that's a simple transition. Quartz Composer, like I said before, it better suits someone who is very engineering oriented, you could say, and learning curve is very, very high. But Keynote, I think, will be very simple. And if you watch that that movie on Keynotopia, you will be blown away how simple it is.